My name is Bill Jones. I'm with recapturefederalism.com and also operationofficialmisconduct.com. Today's topic concerns Barack Obama Sr. In the one paper that he wrote, it's a tutorial on problems facing our socialism. It was written in 1965 in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a critique of papers. And I'll read down at the bottom. There are different authors for this papers, and I'm going to concern myself, and this only concerns itself with the one that Barack Hussein Obama Sr. wrote in July of 1965. And it states on the bottom about Mr. Obama. Barack, and that's the African spelling, Barack H. Obama read his economics at Harvard University. He is currently in Nairobi, working for his doctorate. His dissertation is on an econometric model of the staple theory of development. His is one of the critiques picked among the many received in the Journal Office of the Kenya's Sessional Paper Number 10 on African Socialism. This was printed, and on all these different articles were printed in the East African Journal, a paper. This is Barack H. Obama's title page, page 1 of his critique. The top there, another critique of sensational paper number 10, and the title, Problems Facing Our Socialism. At this point in time, Kenya had been a colony, British colony. Barack Obama Sr. grew up in that area. He was born and grew up as a child in a Muslim village, even though he was not Muslim. Later he will go to an Anglican school, yet he will not convert to Christianity. Instead, after he completes his schooling at that level, and before he goes to Hawaii, on a scholarship, by the way, from the Kennedy Foundation, he converts to atheism. And make it very clear here, he is a Marxist, socialist, communist. We're going to go through his papers. But on this page, let me quote, "Likewise, the actions of these leaders, while diverting a little from the capitalistic system, have not by any means been directed towards any particularly defined ideology, be it scientific socialism, inter alia, communism." This is what they're talking about. It was also when you hear black liberation theology, Afrocentrism, this is what we're talking about. This is what the basis is. They use these fancy words and titles as a distraction, as a deceptive practices, and they're very good at that. I'll show you in here where they disguise unemployment, for instance. They use that phrase a couple of times. In this area right here, this is page 2 of what he's written. You'll notice there's numbers on the bottom. That was in the original master paper that was written. We're just looking at his portion of this. Where the cursor's at, there's an area here. Let me read this area. This is a rough print because these are images. This was taken off a microfiche. None of this itself is digitized in modern terms. But let me read. The master paper is what he replies. It says that it abhors foreign ideology. But what foreign ideology is meant here? Does what occur in Ghana, Tanzania, Great Britain, or the USA considered foreign? When looked at in this angle, one immediately notices the first mistake, Visa, not defining African socialism so as to embody a cross-section of Africa, as the paper by the very title purports. It would have been more clear and logistic to define African socialism and then state in its independence. After all, how can we talk of independence of something people do not know? Then the next paragraph, which is the lower one down here. This is about tribalism. Now, when you hear Barack Obama Jr. talking about things, when he talks, the book he wrote is Dreams from My Father. Not of my father, but from my father. He has taken these and he has brought this ideology to the United States. And when he says that he's going to make fundamental changes, this is what he's talking about. He's talking about communism. But Mr. Jr. Doesn't have, he's a typical communist, which is deceptive and distracting procedures and strategies. But in this paragraph, he talks about this, and this is really African tribalism. When we have a short description of African traditions and what these traditions imply within contemporary society, yet the interrelations which this bears to what follows is lost. This does not lead to any basic factors. As an example, the African tradition is fundamentally based on communal ownership of major means of production and sharing of the fruits of labor so expended in production to the benefit of all. And yet the paper advocates land title deeds and private ownership of land, a major means of production. How do these two conflicting factors reconcile? You see what you have, that the Kenya went from a colonial country to an independent country a few years before this, and it was a transition. The government there is still trying to hang on to some of its commercial stuff, capitalism, things of that sort, and Barack Obama Sr., the communist that he is, he wants to go all out communism and base it on the tribalism. You see this in the black community, the leadership. They've brainwashed the communities, the black communities, into this type of thinking. We now have the next page, and down here where you see the cursor at, that paragraph. And let me start reading part of it, or just a section of it, if I can. Can one deny that the African, while not pleased with the system, did not covet the high place given to the European and Asian? Can one deny the fact that we Africans have likewise started the same thing, and that we have the haves and have-nots, which are poles apart, both in living surroundings, social contacts, and language? How then can we talk of different causes to the same problems when we should be talking of how to correct them? Certainly it is solutions that we're interested in, and one cannot say that solutions cannot be the same where the causes are different. The question is, how are we going to remove the disparities in our country, such as concentration of economic power in Asian and European hands, while not destroying what already has been achieved, at the same time assimilating these groups to build one country. That paragraph there, you notice the haves and have-nots. What do we hear all the time from the left, from the Democrats? This is all Marxist type things. In the next paragraph up here on top, the top right, if you think this sounds like a blueprint, it is, and it says so right in this paragraph here, this short paragraph. And I quote, It is interesting to note that the paper recognizes failures of both Marxian socialism and laissez-faire in solving these problems. Yet recognition only leads to trying new means of doing things, and it is far cry to say that the blueprint put in the paper will enable us to solve them. It is basically a passive rather than active, as I shall come to show later. Then we go down to the bottom right paragraph, and just one or two sentences here. Let us examine the operating characteristics of African socialism as put down in the paper. Here the paper goes into the use and control of resources. The first statement concerns conflict of opinion or attitude toward land ownership. He proceeds to talk about land ownership. Talk about all you buying homes without money and things of this sort. The left-wing socialist Democrats, they don't like being called labeled. Whatever they are, this is what they're doing. And with the foreclosures and things of that sort, those examples that we have, and that's directly related to what Mr. Obama Sr. in 1965 is talking about. On this page, the last paragraph of this page, and then it continues on to the next page, is an interesting one. We talked about the blueprint. This is typical blueprint strategies of the communist. This paragraph talks about the destruction of capitalism and currency, money, and the money of different countries, in the relationship of trade and what have you. They talk about class problems. That's the basis of Marxism. It's class struggle, class warfare. And here he talks about it. On class problems, the paper states, since there was not such a thing in Africa, the problem is that of prevention. This is to ignore the truth of the matter. One wonders whether the authors of the paper have not noticed that a discernible class structure has emerged in Africa, and particularly in Kenya. While we welcome the idea of prevention, we should also try to cure what has slipped in, the elimination of foreign economic and political domination. Is a good gesture towards this. So our plans to develop in order to prevent antagonistic classes. But we also need to eliminate power structures that we have been built through excessive accumulation, so that not only a few individuals shall control a vast magnitude of resources, as is the case now. It is a case of cure and prevention, and not prevention alone. The paper says that the principle of political equality eliminates the use of economic power as a political base. It is strange that the government can say this wherever we go, in America, in Africa, in Europe, the dollar, the pound, and the mark have been used as political weapons despite professed ideologies. It is good to be optimistic, but and it continues on to this page. Let me go back. I'll start at the last sentence where we finished off the previous page. It is good to be optimistic, but so long as we maintain free enterprise, one cannot deny that some will accumulate more than others. Nor is it unlikely that in a country with low per capita incomes to subject the poor into submitting to political ideologies and persuade them to vote for those who offer them money would not be difficult, and has in fact been occurring. There we go, the entitlement society. Where the cursor at, this paragraph, I'm not going to read it, it's a fairly long paragraph. You if you go back, and I recommend everybody read this whole paper. And as you can see, it's rather long and cumbersome, complicated. But this paragraph, it's all about affirmative action. This is back in 1965. What was happening all over the world with communism. They're talking about affirmative action. We have to lift people up, and we can't do it through capitalism. We have to give people, put them in the front of the bus, and with entitlements and things of that sort. They need to do that. This is personally a bone to pick with me. In 1975, I was working for General Motors, and I got zipped by affirmative action. So it's a sore point with me. It's a bunch of garbage. It's pure communism. Where the cursor is now, this is a long paragraph. I'm not going to read it all. But this is, I'm going to read part of it. It talks about accumulation. And it's interesting. You start thinking, well, accumulation, that means the individual is accumulating things. No, just as you see in the United States today, the accumulation is by the economic class, the elite, who are in cahoots with the, in our system, the representatives, not the people. They're controlling things. It's all about control of the money and the economy. And they decide, with the accumulation, they decide who's going to get what. Pure communism. But here, let me read a portion of this, of that one paragraph. The paper wishes to encourage domestic accumulation. This is a good gesture, except for the underlying assumption, which one only reads between the lines. It is the individual private enterprise in business that tends to encourage accumulation. True, in the paper there is a realization that taxation can be used as a means of forced savings, but it is given a secondary place in this respect. Certainly, there is no limit of taxation if the benefits derived from public services by society measure up to the cost and taxation which they have to pay. Later on in this paper, Obama Sr. talks about theoretically that you can tax 100%. Pure communism. Pure Marxism. Farther on down there, he talks about Marxist Day and when they did it then. Yet one who has read Marx cannot fail to see that the corporations are not only what Marx referred to as the advanced stage of capitalism, but Marx even called it finance capitalism, by which a few would control the finances of so many, as though this have not only the economic power but the political power as well. You see this idea of banks too big to fail? This is where this is from. We've gone to the left wing and the leftist and the Marxist, those in power in the United States. They do all the accumulation. They're the ones that make the decision. They control it all. It's a totalitarian society. That's what Marxism, communism, socialism is. On this page here, where my cursor is at, is the tail end of this particular paragraph. It's a very long paragraph, so I'm only going to read part of it, but it's very significant. It's all about redistribution of wealth. Yeah, sure, that's what the communists are about, the Marxists, going way back. It's just not Obama Jr. It's where he gets it from. It's from his father and other communists. He was, a mentor of his was Frank Davis Marshall, a communist in Hawaii. So this is the master plan. And in this paragraph, let me read this portion of it there. There is a small minority of people, and worse still on a racial basis, who have high incomes and who can afford to save, but no country can afford to rely on one group or small segment of society to do all the saving. Nor is all the saving being invested in this country. Some are sent abroad in the form of dividends and for other reasons. What is more important is to find means by which we can redistribute our economic gains to the benefit of all, and at the same time be able to channel some of these gains to future production. This is the government's obligation. It should have come out with a plan in a paper to achieve this. The government recognized that each pound saved can generate 3 pounds in both foreign aid and assistance. Is not this the reason the government should tax the rich more so and to generate high tax surpluses? My oh my, redistribution of wealth. And this is what they pound and force upon: oppression of the American people and the middle class, destroy the middle class. They decide who's going to get what, and they'll just take. By the way, redistribution of wealth is a violation of the 10th commandment. So, there's a religious component here. That's why the Democratic Party wants separation of church and state. It's really not church. They use that as a distraction. It's really of all religions and the basic Judeo-Christian moral code. But this is a violation of that. Now, here we go to this next paragraph. It may look familiar. Theoretically, there's nothing that can stop the government from taxing 100%. This is how I found this paper, by the way. That there was a picture on the movie screen in D'Souza's movie Obama 2016. There was a picture, an image of this paragraph, and he brought it up. I don't know why, probably for time constraints, but D'Souza only keyed in on this one paragraph. If you've been still here and listening, there's so much in this paper. But this paragraph, theoretically, there is nothing that can stop the government from taxing 100% of income, so long as the people get benefits from the government commensurate with their income, which is taxed. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but just the thought of that. The thought of that. They're going to, the communist, socialist, Democratic Party, whatever you want to call them, they're going to decide, a totalitarian group is going to decide to tax you, take everything belongs to them that they can control, and they'll distribute it as they see fit. Somehow I think I'm going to get shortchanged. How about you? The only thing I'm going to say about this page here, this where the cursor is at in this paragraph, there is a term used: disguised unemployment. This is the first place it's used, and then it'll be used somewhere else too, and it'll be on the next page. This is the last page that he wrote, and up there where the cursor is at, the last sentence in this paragraph. If we are going to nationalize, we are going to nationalize what exists and is worth nationalizing. But these are European and Asian enterprises. Interesting. Nationalizing. Of course, when they nationalized General Motors, and that's what they did. They've been nationalizing banks, General Motors, other things, other companies. In effect, with subsidies, that's a form of nationalization. They don't, oh, we're bailing people out. That's deception. That's nationalization. What happened to the bondholders at General Motors? They got zipped. They didn't get their day in court. But oh, he took workers of the world unite. He took care of those unions. Oh yeah, class warfare. That whole next paragraph down here, it's all about nationalization. Now we go over to the next column, right where my cursor's at, if you can make it out. They talk about disguised unemployment again. You see all these figures, and you hear about it on these financial channels here in the United States. Figures come out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's been happening for years, long before Junior's been in office. Junior is just a product of the Democrat Party. He's just he's really good for them, and he has a way with words. He doesn't know anything, but he has a way with words, and he's a communist. He promotes this stuff. You know, you don't want to call somebody names? Okay, what do you want me to call him? And what he is what he is, and what he how he behaves is how he behaves. This idea of disguising employment figures and disguising unemployment. You know, we've been talking for years. This is a Marxist tactic. You know, oh, the employment is really bad. It's at 7% or 10%. No, it's double that. But they lie a lot. They do a lot of lying, deception. The next paragraph, and we'll end with this, I'm not going to read any of it. This whole paragraph is about central control. That's what Marxism is. A fundamental change in America is there is going to be a totalitarian control, a total control of our society by political party supremacy, namely the Democrat Party. Just like you had in all these other places in the 20th century and now into this century. Communist Party in the Soviet Union and in Russia. The Nazis in Germany. The Fascist Party with Mussolini. Ho Chi Minh, North Korea, Cuba. There are individuals along with party supremacy. The worst one, of course, was Pol Pot in the 70s, where you had the Cambodian killing fields. That's really the bad part of totalitarianism. And are we going that way? There are some red flags. Now that I've been through this paper, it's very depressing. It's very depressing. And you can allow yourself, as I have and other people have, to get down on this sort of thing. And it's natural to get down on this stuff. You love your country. You love the federal system of America, constitutions, your basic human rights, which are being violated. And they're being violated, and you get down about that. But have faith. Have faith. There are ways of counteracting this. There are activities of counter psychological operations. It's being used against you. You can use it against them. Nonviolence. Always about nonviolence. The minute you get violent, then they got the upper hand. You do things defensively. And there's other ways of doing it too. What is also occurring in America, most people don't understand or realize, is what's known as lawfare. It's law class warfare. And that's what they're doing against the middle class and against most of the citizens, if not all of them, other than themselves, putting themselves in position. But you need to have faith, because we're going to take some action, nonviolent. We're going to utilize strategies of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 4 steps to civil disobedience. We utilize them. In effect, research, learn what you're doing and how you're being screwed. 2, negotiations, which doesn't work too often, until you put pressure on people. Self-purification, and there's ways of doing that. The biggest one is open up your Bible. Number 4, the 4th step, is direct action. And I presently am working on a public policy for individual citizens on how they can combat the totalitarians. They'll be coming out shortly.